Worst opening ever. Hey guys, how is everybody doing? And today we're going to be talking about Alien 3, the so-called sequel to Aliens. And before I even begin, I want to share a little story. It's actually a very short story. It's about a minute long. When I was younger, I was a bit of an Alien fan. I loved the first two movies. And what's funny is now that I look back on it, is that Alien 3 used to be my favorite Alien movie. It isn't now. But before I get into my reasons why I do not like Alien 3, let's start off positive on Alien 3. My first positive is I do like how violent this movie is. Now, the first two Alien movies, very grounded, doesn't show much of the violence. It's one of my positives on the first Alien, is that it leaves it to the viewer's imagination on what happened to that character. We get an idea, they give us like a split few seconds of what might have happened to that character. Us as an audience, we don't completely know what happened to him in the first two movies, but we have an idea of what happened to him, and the movie gives us enough to let the audience just make up their mind. But in this movie, we've seen two movies at this point to where we need to see the violence, right? And this movie definitely delivers on that. To where I actually really enjoy that, and it's one of the most redeeming factors about the movie and what makes this movie somewhat watchable. And the violence, it's pretty fucking gnarly, especially the first kill that we get in this movie to where like the Xenomorph like spits acid into this one guy's face and he like rolls over and he just goes into a big fan and it just like chops him up. Like that's a gnarly death and that's one of the most creative deaths in the series. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, this actually has the highest body count in the entire Alien series, but I could be mistaken because this movie has a lot of kills and it's very violent. But yeah, this movie's violence, it was definitely a redeeming factor, especially after the more grounded stuff that we got in the first two Aliens. So yeah, it was kind of cool to see a new refreshing thing in the series to see more violence and actually get to see the kills for someone who's a huge gore hound, as I like to call myself. It was kind of nice to see that. I also really like this new version of the xenomorph that we get to where we to where we find out in this movie that the alien or xenomorph takes the form of whatever it comes out of. If it comes out of a human, it kind of has like human-like factors where it just stands on 2 feet and it just moves normally and acts like a normal xenomorph, like a xenomorph that we usually see. But in this version, the facehugger actually goes onto a dog. I don't like that. I don't like seeing dogs die. And he attaches himself to the dog, and the alien comes out of the dog, which was a very painful scene to watch. I don't like seeing dogs die. But I do like this version of the alien because it is more vicious and it's more violent. It's quicker to where it actually runs on all of its fours to where we get like cool POV shots to where it's like running on walls, just chasing after people on the walls. Like some of that stuff was cool. However, I will say this, there are a few shots in this movie to where you can clearly tell some of it was shot on a green screen or it was complete CGI because some of the movements of the alien kind of seemed wonky to where sometimes it kind of felt like they used stop animation, which I'm a huge fan of, but it doesn't really work for this type of movie. And just some of the shots you can clearly tell is on a green screen because you can see like a green outline around the alien. So yeah, that was one of the biggest downfalls of the movie, but the I do like this version of the alien. I do like how it kind of takes like the movements of a dog, which it comes from, which I just thought was cool. Now, moving on, my long list of negatives. And, this is more of a personal issue for me. And before I even really explain my negatives, I just want to say this. From going to a brilliant sequel that is Aliens, that is on par, and most of the time is better than the original Alien for me, and it's just one of my all-time favorite movies of all time. I have loved that movie since I was a kid. I have cherished that movie ever since I was a child. It's been one of my favorite movies growing up. I adore Aliens. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. And I get it if some people are just saying, well, you keep comparing this to Aliens. Like, this movie shouldn't really be talked about more than Aliens and all that. Whatever you might say. And I understand because throughout my negatives, you're going to hear me say this ruins Aliens, but that doesn't make sense because Aliens did this or anything. So I will say that before I get into it. But This movie had so much promise to where you get a sequel, Ripley's coming back, you get the brilliant director that is David Fincher, who has directed some of my all-time favorite projects of all time. Fight Club, Zodiac, Seven, The Social Network, and last year with The Killer, which I really enjoyed. You get such a brilliant director in David Fincher, and this is his first ever film that he ever made. And I get it. You have to start from somewhere. So, as a director, if you want to try things and if you want to put your name out there, you got to try to get movies made. So, I feel that's the reason he made this. But, holy fuck. If this is what the movie started off his career, I am so glad he went off and made better projects because if this was his starting point, I guarantee you, no one would have hired him back then because this movie is so fucking terrible. But with that all out of the way, my first negative, and as you saw in my intro and as you see on my cover of my video, this has the worst possible opening to a third film in a trilogy I have ever seen in my life.
Fuck! Fuck! Fuck, motherfucker! Motherfucker! You know how fucking stupid you fucking are! No!
When you get the ending of Aliens, to where Newt, Hicks, Bishop, and Ripley, they all get their happy ending. Basically, they fly off into hyperspace and they're into space, excuse me, and they're hypersleep, trying to sleep their way all the way home back to Earth. But then this movie has the audacity to open to showing you that there's actually an egg with a hugger in the ship that apparently I have no idea how it got in there. They don't care to explain it because no reasoning whatsoever, apparently. And you show that, and then in the opening, it's blood or acid comes out of it because somehow it got cut doing something, and it leaked through the ground, started off this fire sprinkler thing to where they got shut off into space in like an emergency thing, but they crash landed on on this Earth or planet. But as they crash down, everybody dies except for Ripley. Did I say Sydney earlier? If I did, I meant Ripley. They killed Newt from supposedly drowning from the sprinkler system that is meant to save their fucking lives from the fire, but no, it just made her drown and die. And Hicks apparently got stabbed by a piece of metal from the ship, and just Bishop, who's a robot, just got fucking tear to smithereens because fuck him apparently. But the fact they had the audacity to begin their movie like that and to ruin the ending of Aliens to where when you watch that ending and you know what comes up after that, it just ruins that trilogy. Because if this movie did not do that and you had a perfect execution to this trilogy with Newt, Hicks, Bishop, and Ripley for a third fucking film, you could have had one of the best trilogies to ever exist. But what do? They open the movie and killing fucking characters from Aliens. Why? Because we only want to see Ripley, apparently? I honestly don't know what they were thinking back in 1990, writing this movie and saying, that is a good idea how to open the movie. Fuck those characters, let's just focus on Ripley. Bravo! And the whole love stuff going on with Ripley and this guy that was supposedly a drug addict before he got shipped off onto this planet, I never really caught on to it. They kind of play onto it a little bit, but they never make it clear that it's true because, like, there's, like, one part where, like, instantly after Ripley, like, shaves her head because apparently this whole planet's just infested with dudes. There's not one woman on the goddamn planet. And she shaves her head and she's talking to this guy that basically recommended to it, and they're, like, in this wherever, in the middle of nowhere on this planet, and just in this building, and the first thing she says, she goes, "You're attracted to me." It's just like, okay, we're doing this already, and then, like, a couple minutes later, they're shown waking up in the same bed, excuse me, in the same bed together, but they never really kind of touch upon that they might have slept together, or they might have just slept in the same bed together. They actually did have sex, but they don't really play into that. But it's just like, what is this doing? What does this add to the fucking movie? And then the guy who is one of the only likable characters of the movie, he ends up dying, and that just goes nowhere. I don't know why they introduced that. That didn't really fucking go anywhere. One of my biggest issues, and I have tried and tried and tried to look this up to see how the fuck it's possible. The fact that Ripley is infected with a chest burster in this movie, to where apparently the one face hugger on the ship that our characters escaped on tried to hook onto Hicks, but his error thingy or whatever cut out on the thing to where it needed a living or organ to live to infest on. But Hicks was obviously dead. So what does it do? It goes on to Ripley, which obviously it would do. But then after the ship crashes, it shows that the facehugger is still alive and then attaches himself to the dog of the movie, which ends up giving us the chest burster. But here is my issue with it. Number one, there is only one facehugger on that fucking ship. And as we learned from the first movie, as when the facehugger basically has done its deed, basically does its job, does what it's been born to do, it gets onto the person's face, and after it puts the alien in your chest, it dies. I don't know. I don't know if it kills itself or it just dies because it put all of its energy into that person. I don't know how it just dies, but it dies. Obviously, it's done its deed, so it dies. But somehow that facehugger was able to stay alive to go on to the dog of this movie. And number two, the chest burster usually comes out of you after a few minutes, maybe an hour after you've woken up from your coma after with the face hugger all over your face. So, Ripley has been able to survive for like a week, 3 days maybe, with an alien inside of her chest.
What?
And it hasn't killed her, hasn't tried to get out. And when does it get out? Oh, it just gets out when the alien just ironically dies, and that's when the alien's just like, oh, I'm ready to come out. The other guy's dead. It's my turn. No, that is not how this fucking works. That is not how ever it has worked. Try to stay calm. Digging my toes into my carpet kind of hurts, but it just makes no fucking sense how that works. And number three, that further ruins the ending to Aliens. No, they didn't just kill Newt, they didn't just kill Hicks, and then they didn't just kill Bishop, but they have the audacity to infect Ripley and kill her at the end of the fucking movie. Try to stay calm. And let's talk about what other further ruins Aliens. Bishop. So where we find out at the end of this movie that Bishop is not actually a robot, is that he's actually a living human being that created an AI version of himself to go out on this mission. Why? It doesn't care to explain. It's just like, oh, I created an AI version of myself because I have big brain and I can do that. So, you're meaning to tell me that the bishop that we followed in Aliens never had a purpose, so when he dies in this movie to where he's deactivated, that means nothing! Because that's not the real Bishop then! Bishop was never an AI! He was created by himself! So that just further ruins Aliens and that character. Sure, is it cool to see Lance Hendrickson come back? Absolutely. I love Lance Hendrickson. He's one of my favorite actors from the 80s and 90s. I love him in Pumpkinhead. But that just absolutely ruins Aliens. And it ruins that character. Sure, is it cool to see him come back in Alien vs. Predator? Absolutely. That's one of the most redeeming factors about that movie. But holy fuck. Why is that a thing? And finally, it's not a big deal, but it's just a huge bummer. And the characters, none of them are noteworthy, none of them are really likable. They're all kind of the same to where they're all criminals because this is like a planet that's basically a prison or whatever. This is a version of a prison, apparently, that planet is, to where all these characters are the same. None of them are really notable, none of them are really likable. There's only like two characters in this entire movie that are kind of cool, and that was the supposedly love interest for Ripley in this movie, who I was kind of interested in his character because we find out he was a drug addict and supposedly a drug dealer. And I was really interested to see if he would have some sort of arc, or maybe Ripley and him would trying to get together, maybe. I don't know. And then you get like this black guy who's like a priest, and apparently he's sent there because he was a murderer and rapist of women. And so he kind of changes his faith and becomes a priest. He's kind of cool. I kind of enjoyed him, and I was a bit bummed when he died because, again, one of the only redeeming factors about the movie. But every other character is just the same. Just some crack addict looking motherfucker that's bald and is scared and is very violent. Because again, I don't want to keep comparing this to Aliens, but when you go from Aliens to having a hugely stacked cast and hugely memorable actors, and you have characters that are just fun to be around, fun to watch on screen, to go to these characters that are played by a bunch of nobodies and a bunch of characters you don't even care about, it's a huge downgrade. Overall, guys, I really don't like Alien 3. I try to be the guy that tries to speak positively on every movie that I try to talk about. Even if I don't like the movie, I try to find some redeemable factors about the movie. But Alien 3 just pisses me off to my core. Like I said, this used to be my favorite when I was younger, but as I got older, maybe around the age of 8 is when I started to realize this movie wasn't very good. But this is just, sure, are there worse sequels out there? Absolutely. But this movie just absolutely ruins what Aliens was and just ruins the end of this trilogy, which could have been one of the best trilogies ever made. But this movie just basically comes over and says, fuck you, that doesn't matter anymore. What do you guys think about Alien 3? I'm starting to calm down a little bit after that, but let me know what you guys think about Alien 3. Have you seen it? What do you think about it? Do you, for some reason, defend this movie? Do you not like this movie? Do you, for some reason, prefer this over Aliens? Let me know in the comments below, and we shall talk about it. If you like this video, like it. If you love to subscribe, hit the bell notification so you will get notified for all of my latest videos. And, of course, until my next video, I will see you all next time.